Well, welcome. I'm live at the old age home. My fairy name here apparently is That Wild Guy. So, coming to you live from the old age home is That Wild Guy. And I wanted to open a fairy circle, a heart circle. And the topic will be homosexual values. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I went down to the Gay Community Center, to the library there, and I got a book by Will Roscoe. And I really like his writing, and that's what attracted me to the book. And it's the biography of Harry Hay. And I had heard about Harry Hay because I spent a lot of time with the Radical Fairies. And I even met him once at the 20th anniversary of Stonewall in New York City. But I was just introduced to him. I didn't spend any time talking to him. And I really didn't think much about it because I felt like people had turned him into sort of a cult figure, that he was our spiritual leader in the Radical Fairies. And I just really didn't go for that because, you know, I'm a judgmental bitch. And so I just passed on all that. And just now I was at that library and I saw the book and I thought, oh, check this out. And it's really interesting. I am just really blown away by a lot of it. I haven't even gotten through a third of the book, but I'm just really fascinated because, of course, there were gay and lesbian people who were open before him, but he really is the one who started the political and cultural discussion about homosexuals and our place in society. And that's the heart circle that I would like to talk about, the homosexual values. Because as I'm reading this book, when they started the Mattachine Society, they wrote up a little document, and it was basically saying that to the society at large, look, we're damaged human beings, you know, like alcoholics, and we're trying to work it out, and we're doing our best, and we want to be good citizens, and we want to be good parents, but we have this really serious problem. And that's where they started. But then around 1952, he writes about homosexual values versus community prejudices. And that is when it changes. And this is what really touched me, because I think this is such a valid issue right now, and an opinion that is rarely heard. And what happens in 1952 is, instead of cowering and saying, you know, we're sorry, we're diseased, we're damaged, we're trying to fix it, he turns it around and he says to the heterosexuals, what makes you such great role models in our community, and what gives you the right to question us? And he backs that up with a lot of historical evidence of gays in tribal societies, and he gave lectures about that. And then he extrapolates on this a little further and says, you know, as long as we keep getting pushed as homosexual men, we keep getting pushed into the outsider position, we are going to act out in certain ways because of that. And it will, you know, we'll become isolated, and we'll always feel like we could never possibly fit in, and things of that nature. And it will affect our spirit and our intellect and our emotions and everything else. And that, you know, that is certainly true. Back in the 60s and 70s, that was pretty much the story. If you know, gay men were fired. My first partner was fired within an hour because one of his salesmen caught us kissing, and there was no recourse. And so you develop this attitude that no matter what you did in society, no matter how good you were, no matter how smart you were going to get punished just for being gay. And it did affect how you lived your life. But what changed again in the 70s, and it goes back to this chapter, is that we began to question the heterosexuals and say, you know, what gives you the right to judge us? And what makes you the role models for all that is moral? And that was really strong in the 70s. I lived in San Francisco in the 70s, and I was at some of the first large gay pride events. I lived there when Harvey Milk was shot, and I was at the White Night riots. Um, and and while we did, in some ways keep a low profile because, of course, nobody wanted to be hurt or lose their jobs or anything, we had such a large community going at that point that we did overtly and radically question things like, why would someone want to get married? Let's question the institution of marriage. Why would somebody want to have children when the environment is so messed up? Why does somebody want to join the military when it's obvious that the military is being used by corporations to exploit resources from foreign countries? We asked those questions. And underneath it all, especially things like radical lesbian feminism, they question the whole underlying premise of all of that. And a lot of radical gay men did the same. And many of my friends, this has been a topic that many of my friends discussed throughout my life, and that is, why are we always asking permission from heterosexuals to fit in? And after Harvey Milk was shot and the White Night riots, it changed drastically, and it was like, we're not asking anymore, we're demanding our rights. But then it turned into the whole rainbow thing and the human rights campaign thing, and I always went back and forth on that. I thought, okay, great, we can get married, and churches are welcoming us, and you can join the military. But when I recently saw a photograph of two people in the military who are officers being married on a military base, and I've seen pictures of police officers getting married, homosexual, and it really blows my 1970s mind, because that was, it was not possible, but it was also not wanted. It was that we were on a completely different dialogue then. But, over the 80s and 90s and through the 2000s, it became more and more, let's just try to fit in and get these basic things, and, and let's not rock the boat too much, and, maybe they won't hurt us. And this is what brings me to this heart circle, is that I feel like it's time to reassert what Harry Hay was bringing up in the first place. And that is, let's question the heteronormative status quo here. It's really time, because, the irony is that over how long have they said that we are an abomination against nature, when in fact the population of the planet is increasing at 3 additional people per second. If you go online, there are these population calculators, and they're just going brrr, and each one of those is a baby being born, and it's additional babies being born. This takes into account the death rate. And so, and if you do go on to any environmental movement or ecology movement that is primarily heterosexual, it is always about the children and the grandchildren, our future generations. And I've listened to the lesbian feminist response to that, and that is that I'm alive right now, and I don't have children. I don't have children. So what about my life right now? And do I get to question you the way you've questioned me for how many centuries? Okay, so at 3 additional children per second, the climate's changed, resources are running up. Okay, never mind the climate. Timber, metals, water, all these other resources have been polluted or have been extremely used up, because the population just keeps growing and growing and growing. And the ecology is finite, and it has rules. And I'll talk about that later at another video, but there are rules to the ecology. And so what do heterosexuals say about this? They say, well, it's our duty to have children, and it's our primary purpose for being human beings, and it is the primary purpose for all living things to reproduce. And that, I don't reproduce. Am I not a human being? Many of my gay friends a small percentage of my gay friends and lesbian friends over my life have had children. The rest of us are human beings, and we've had lives, and we've done things on this planet. There are other things to do here besides have children. And that's, you know, I just saw this great thing. There are new discussions about this on various sites online, and they're like eco-queers and out for sustainability and that sort of thing. And there's one called Save the Straights, and that's this discussion right here. In the face of drastic ecological disruption, obvious, you know, with climate change. I mean, just turn on the news today. I mean, it's just, you know, 17 trillion gallons of water fell on Louisiana in a couple of days, and, you know, the fires and the huge droughts in the Middle East, and there are something like 20 million climate refugees coming out of the Middle East right now. And what's the response of heterosexuals? Well, I only have 2 children. That will replace me and my husband. No. I mean, how are these children going to eat? What are they going to do when there is no more water? If you don't have water, you don't have food. So, Harry Hay was saying that our role as homosexual men has a historical background. We were the cultural leaders in tribal societies. So that when things got to this point, when things got to a point of danger, or we were at a crossroads, the tribe came to us. And we asked the relevant questions. Okay, well, the relevant question right now is, why would you have a child knowing the state of this climate on this planet and the depletion of resources at this moment? What are you going to tell this child? Oh, you know, I was busy shopping and I didn't have time to look at the news that day, and we just figured everything would turn out okay because they kept saying it wasn't that bad. I mean, what are you going to tell this kid? So, anyway, what are we going to tell these kids? So as homosexual men, save the straights. Ask them, why are you having children? The resources are gone. We live on a planet. We live on a planet. And beyond that, it's also time for us to take our position back. We have been here before. We, gay men, homosexual men, fags, whatever you want to call us, radical fairies, we have been here before. And it's time for us to stop being in this outsider, cowering position of, you know, taking the scraps. Heterosexuals have given us the scraps. Marriage, they weren't using that. They were over that. They had like a 70% divorce rate. Here, you can have that. Church, oh, who goes to church anymore? They're online, tapping away on their text and trying to find a sale on Amazon for their kids. The military, you can have that too, because, you know, they're using drones these days. Who joins the military? You know, they've given us the scraps. That doesn't solve the problem. They keep breeding. It is the cult of breeding. It is heteronormativity gone cray-cray. It used to be, and I'm old enough to know this, that back in the 60s and 70s, heterosexuals were violently crazy against us, and that still exists in parts of the world, but that's gotten a little better here. But they're still crazy. I mean, it's just like, I can spend about an hour with heterosexuals and I just start scratching my head, because it's like, what planet are you living on? When they see the devastation of the environment, and your next thought is, oh, I think I'll go have more children, and then immediately go shopping for that thought, you know, got to buy baby stuff and all that. It boggles my mind. So yes, I open up that heart circle, and I'm going to try to play this. I think I got it tuned this time, and this is a Native American flute that somebody made me. And these are feathers that I found in the forest. I lived out in the